In the middle of Rome, Italy, a businessman named Claudio arrives at his company's building and goes to the elevator, where he receives a call from his wife, Lena, who says she is extremely frightened because several strange attacks are happening around the city for no apparent reason. The woman explains that, due to the number of clashes taking place, numerous streets around Rome have been blocked off, and the government has created some bans to control the situation. Suddenly, the lights in the elevator start flashing, forcing it to stop moving. Claudio then warns his wife about what just happened, and Lena asks him to do the shopping at the supermarket after work since she couldn't get there because of the traffic. Upon hearing this, the businessman becomes enraged, and before ending the call, he scolds his wife, saying that he already has too many problems to solve in his company. Shortly afterward, Claudio contacts the building's security team, who ask him to wait a few minutes so they can investigate the situation. Realizing that he's going to be late for his meeting, the businessman calls his assistant, Sarah, and asks if his clients are still waiting for him to arrive. The woman tells him that she is having great difficulty keeping the clients calm, but Claudio orders the secretary to wait a few more minutes as he will soon be able to get to his office. While waiting for the elevator to be repaired, the man hears footsteps outside the car. Desperate, Claudio cries out to be rescued, but he gets no response and is indignant at being ignored by those on the other side. As time goes by, Sarah gets in touch with her boss again and tells him that she's getting desperate as the client is becoming more and more impatient. Furious at all the delays his meeting is suffering, Claudio bangs on the elevator door and starts threatening those outside, ordering them to open the elevator immediately. Realizing that he will have to deal with the situation alone, the man presses the emergency button once more and asks the attendant to give him the contact details of his colleagues who are carrying out roof repairs. When he gets through, Claudio scolds the security team for all the problems they're causing, but at that moment, the employees start shouting in desperation, causing the call to be interrupted. As he has no other way of getting help, the businessman removes his jacket and decides to try opening the cabin doors with his bare hands. After a few minutes of effort, Claudio manages to partially open the elevator and takes advantage of the gap to shout for help, but again, he gets no response. Believing that his employees may have left work early because their boss hadn't shown up, the man becomes even angrier and tries to get through the opening anyway. However, nothing seems to work, and Claudio remains trapped in the elevator, causing him to become increasingly hopeless. A few minutes later, the businessman receives a call from his wife, who is extremely frightened, saying that a sinister man is knocking on the door. Worried, Claudio asks the woman to call the authorities, but she says that both landlines and cell phones are out of signal, so she has no way of calling for help. In order to calm his wife down, the man orders her to lock herself in her room and stay hidden while he asks Stefano, his driver, to go to her. Claudio then contacts his employee, asking him to go to his home, calm Lena down, and make sure there are no intruders around. After this, the businessman talks to his wife again, and the woman reveals that she is following numerous emergency reports on the news, where she discovers that hundreds of people are going mad. Lena explains that the attacks and collective outbreaks are increasing more and more and that they are occurring in all areas of Rome, as if a criminal organization were trying to take over the city. Claudio then says that Stefano will arrive in a few minutes and begs the woman to try to remain calm, saying that these reports are nothing more than media exaggerations. When she hears this, Lena manages to calm down and asks her husband to keep in touch frequently so she can be sure he's all right. As the call ends, the businessman feels increasingly stressed and starts reading the news about the recent attacks on his cell phone. At that moment, Claudio hears some screams coming from the corridor, and when he looks outside, he sees several people desperately running for their lives. Soon after, the man is surprised by Marta, who begs him to let her into the cabin, but before she can be rescued, the woman is grabbed by her pursuers. In a panic, Claudio tries to hold on to his ex-girlfriend's arms, but his efforts make no difference, and Marta ends up being eliminated, leaving the man even more desperate. Trying to understand what's going on, the businessman approaches the doors, but at that moment, he is startled by a pair of zombies who try to break through the opening to devour him. However, the monsters begin to hear the screams of other survivors around the building, and thanks to this, they decide to abandon Claudio, who is completely terrified by what he has just witnessed. Desperate, the man contacts his employee and tries to report everything that is happening, but during the conversation, Stefano ends up having a serious accident, which causes the call to be terminated. Thanks to this, the businessman is even more devastated. While he is lamenting, he receives a call from the security guard, who says he hasn't found any of his colleagues on the terrace. Trying to save the man's life, Claudio shouts at him to stay in his room, because what they are facing is not a criminal organization, but a collective zombie outbreak. However, the employee doesn't listen to his superior, and when he hears knocks on his office door, he decides to answer it, causing him to be attacked by the zombies. As a result, the panel's communication stops working, and Claudio feels desolate when he realizes that from now on, he will have to survive on his own, with no guarantee of escaping from that elevator. Sometime later, the man begins to feel increasingly anxious and tries to call his wife to find out if she is still safe. The problem is that the woman doesn't answer his call, and Claudio is devastated because he believes that Lena may no longer be alive. Suddenly, the man receives a call from Sarah, but as he turns to answer it, he ends up attracting the attention of Marta, who is turned into a zombie. In order to escape the grip, Claudio throws himself backward and uses the elevator support bar to strike the woman repeatedly, knocking the creature out in a few seconds. The businessman then uses his water bottle to wash himself after fighting the monster, and soon after, he pushes Marta's body away with the iron bar. Trying to keep his mind sane, the man tears out the pages of his workbook and places the sheets on the floor of the cabin to dry the blood around him. At that moment, Claudio hears someone approaching in the corridors and hides, so he won't be found by the creatures. However, when he looks outside, he realizes it is actually Sylvia, and after catching her eye, the man tries to calm her down, saying they can leave the building together. The businessman asks the woman to help him force the door open with the iron bar so he can free himself. After several attempts, the pair manage to widen the passage by a few centimeters, but suddenly, Claudio drops the object on the floor, causing a noise that echoes throughout the entire floor. Desperate, the businessman tries to help Sylvia get inside the elevator, but to no avail. To avoid being caught by the creatures, the woman runs for cover. Just then, a furious zombie appears and throws itself on the ground to devour Claudio, who retreats in fright. However, before it could reach its victim, the monster is struck by Sylvia, and after knocking it down, she finishes it off with several attacks using a golf club. Impressed by the assistant's bravery, the man congratulates the woman on her courage. Thanks to her distraction, however, the woman ends up being surprised by a group of zombies who start dragging her away, and as she is still trapped, the businessman can do nothing to rescue her. A few minutes later, Claudio feels extremely distraught and starts to follow the news on his cell phone, where he discovers that the army has been mobilized due to the chaos in the capital. Worried about his family, the man tries to contact Lena, who is relieved to discover that her husband is still alive. Distraught, Claudio says they have no chance of survival and begins to be consoled by his wife. At that moment, Lena realizes that the house is being invaded by several insane zombies and calls her husband in a panic. Trying to help her survive, Claudio orders the woman to push the cupboard against the door to block the creature's passage. Lena then asks what she can do next, but the businessman admits that he has no idea. He is feeling hopeless with everything that is happening. Despite having set up safeguards in the room, the zombies manage to get through the door, forcing Claudio to listen as his wife is eliminated. After a while, one of the building's employees walks cautiously through the corridors, and when he comes across the man trapped in the elevator, he asks what's going on. Claudio says he has no idea what could have caused all the chaos and suggests that the survivor run away before he's found by the creatures, since he can't even help him get into the cabin. At that moment, the employee is surprised by the zombies and runs away to avoid being devoured. Hours later, Claudio begins to have a mental breakdown and yells for all the creatures to come toward him, allowing him to take out his anger on his enemies. In the middle of the chaos, the businessman finds Sarah being chased by a horde of zombies. He shouts for her to hide as fast as possible. Even though she reaches one of the rooms, the secretary fails to close the door. To save her, Claudio starts making as much noise as possible. He even throws his watch toward the creatures. Still, nothing distracts the zombies, and in seconds, they break in, causing Sarah to be devoured by dozens of them. After so many losses in a single day, Claudio starts losing hope. He can no longer bear watching innocent people being attacked right in front of him. To stay informed, he uses his phone to check the news and comes across a video from a surviving reporter. In it, the woman says all police units are fighting the threats and urges the people of Rome to leave the city immediately. The monsters return to the elevator and try to force their way through. At the same time, the building loses power, plunging the cabin into darkness. Shortly after, the zombies are taken out by a shotgun blast. Thinking it might be a policeman, Claudio shouts to be found. He then sees an elite soldier who says he lost contact with his headquarters and his entire team. Realizing they can't open the doors on their own, the soldier decides to head to the terrace to restart the generator and rescue Claudio. Before leaving, the soldier introduces himself as Marcello and gives Claudio a walkie-talkie so they can stay in touch. He also hands him a pistol and explains how it works before heading off. While waiting for Marcello, Claudio hears distant gunshots and asks what's happening. Marcello explains he encountered 4 zombies along the way, but managed to kill them. On the 9th floor, he says he can't reach the terrace. There's furniture piled on the stairs acting as a barrier. Claudio thinks for a moment and remembers the 9th floor was under renovation. He realizes there might be scaffolding outside. Marcello checks one of the rooms and finds the platforms left by workers. As he enters the new area, he tells Claudio to stay silent. He's about to cross a zombie-filled zone. A few seconds later, Marcello confirms he's found the terrace exit. Claudio warns him about earlier attacks and tells him to be careful opening the door. Marcelo then reaches the power panel and restores the electricity. But once the cabin is reactivated, Claudio senses something blocking the doors. Curious, he uses his phone's flashlight to investigate, but before he finds anything, he's attacked by another zombie. He fights back with a pistol. After missing a few shots, he manages to kill it. But the gunfire only draws more zombies to the elevator. Seeing Claudio panic, Marcelo urges him to pull himself together. Claudio fires at the zombies and, after killing them all, feels like a criminal. Every infected he's killed was once a colleague. To calm him down, Marcelo explains that these infected people will never return to normal. They're just monsters in human form. Suddenly, Marcelo starts screaming. Before Claudio can react, the soldier is overwhelmed by zombies, and his walkie-talkie is destroyed. Now completely alone, Claudio tries to distract himself. He studies the pistol and looks at pictures of his late wife. Out of nowhere, he sees a group of soldiers running through the building and shooting zombies. But due to the noise, he can't get their attention. By nightfall, Claudio loses the will to survive. Ready to end it all, he screams in desperation, attracting more zombies to the elevator. The soldier managed to escape and descend to the roof of the cabin using steel cables. Claudio uses an iron bar to push open the hatch, letting Marcelo climb inside. Marcelo quickly takes out the zombies with his shotgun, and now safe, they both sit on the floor. Claudio asks what happened. Marcelo says he managed to escape, but he was bitten on the leg. Realizing they won't be able to escape, they sit down and reflect on their final hours. Claudio asks how it all started. Marcelo says the attacks began that morning, and within hours, he lost all communication with his team. Saddened, the men talk about their wives. Claudio confesses his regrets, how he failed Lena, especially in her last moments. A few minutes later, Marcelo starts coughing uncontrollably. His body is changing. He lies down to rest and tells Claudio to keep the gun. Once he loses consciousness, Claudio must shoot him twice in the head. Claudio refuses, but Marcelo says he'll do it himself if needed. Hours later, the city is completely deserted. Almost everyone in Rome has been wiped out. In the elevator, Marcelo's condition worsens. Claudio still refuses to kill him. Suddenly, Marcelo's wound starts oozing. The infection takes over, transforming him into a zombie. Marcelo grabs Claudio, and during the struggle, Claudio accidentally shoots himself in the leg. To avoid getting bitten, he fires at Marcelo's body, forcing him back. Then he hits him in the head and fires the second shot, just as Marcelo had asked. The sound attracts more creatures. To stop the bleeding, Claudio uses his tie as a tourniquet. With no ammo left, he grabs Marcelo's shotgun, but its recoil throws him against the wall and knocks him out. At dawn, Claudio wakes up to gunfire. Other survivors are in the building. But this time, he doesn't scream for help. He silently watches the corridors. Just then, his phone rings. It's an unknown number. When he answers, he hears Lena's voice. She says she was rescued by soldiers after managing to run outside before the zombies got her. Overwhelmed, Claudio is speechless, but before they can talk more, the battery dies, cutting the call. Determined to escape, Claudio uses the iron bar to reopen the cabin door. Climbing over Marcelo's body, he grabs the object blocking the exit and finally frees himself. He gears up and heads for the lobby. Along the way, he passes the remains of all the zombie victims. Outside, he walks through a city ruined by the apocalypse. During his journey, he spots some food next to a zombie's body. As he reaches for it, the creature lunges at him. Just then, it's shot by a soldier. Looking around, Claudio is relieved to see military forces nearby. He signals his location to the sharpshooters, filled with hope he might finally see his wife again. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.